working with overwhelm is such an important part of the recovery process. And I think it's something that isn't discussed enough. So I'm actually really excited to share this video with you today. And this is going to be really helpful, especially if you've been struggling with feeling really overwhelmed in your recovery, and maybe you're not even sure why you're feeling so overwhelmed or how to start to help yourself shift out of overwhelm. So first I want to talk about the concept of capacity versus overwhelm in recovery. So think of capacity as something hard is happening, but I can be with it. So it could be, I'm up in the middle of the night, I'm having all these symptoms, my mind is racing, all of it, and this is really hard, but I can be with it. Whereas overwhelm is, well, the hard thing is happening, but I feel like I can't be with it. It's too much, and I feel like I'm drowning, and I just can't be with this. And so we've all experienced this so much, especially when we're at the beginning of our recovery process. Sometimes as we're starting down this process, we're spending most of our time just feeling constantly overwhelmed. And it's actually really common. So if you're feeling that way and that's what you're experiencing, just know that's actually really, really normal, and it won't be the case forever. But knowing the difference between those two internal states of when you're in capacity, the hard thing is happening, but I can be with it, versus the hard thing is happening and I don't feel like I can. And everybody experiences overwhelm a little bit differently. Some people will say to me, it feels like I'm drowning. It feels like I can't breathe. Or that I'm so incredibly panicked that I feel like I'm spiraling in some way. People might describe it as, I just can't be with this. I just can't. And I remember feeling that way too when I was going through my insomnia and my recovery process. I would feel so overwhelmed. And for me, it was a feeling of, I just feel like I'm drowning in this. I'm drowning. And so one of the first things that I will talk with my clients about is overwhelm. It's overwhelm, and really encouraging them to start to get to know what overwhelm feels like. Because we're all a little bit different, and we're going to experience overwhelm a little bit differently. So start to get to know what overwhelm feels like for you. And start to know when you're actually in overwhelm. So why does this actually matter to know? Is because when we're in overwhelm, we actually want to switch gears. We don't want to continue to do this kind of acceptance style recovery work that you may be doing right now. And so by that, I mean the kind of acceptance work where you're meant to move towards and stay with the experience. Stay with your difficult feelings and feel them. Work with your mind or body a little differently, as opposed to avoiding, trying to escape, trying to distract, right? Using safety behaviors or things like that, if you've heard that term. And so if you're on a recovery path with your insomnia and anxiety, it's likely that you might be moving towards trying to do more of this acceptance or surrender style work. I'm just going to call it acceptance work as a whole. I know we could get so much more detailed, but just know that we want to be doing this acceptance style work when we're in capacity, not when we're feeling overwhelmed. Because when we're feeling overwhelmed, it's actually a sign that our brain and nervous system is sensing really high levels of danger. And when that's the case, going towards the difficult experience, staying with it, is just going to end up feeling like you're in a torture chamber of some kind. It's actually going to signal more danger to the system, because you may not be able to actually stay with it and practice responding differently in a new and helpful way. And so in these moments, when you notice that you're actually feeling really overwhelmed, instead of staying with the experience and trying to respond in a new way, instead, it's actually so much more helpful to just pause and go into self-care. reach for anything that's going to feel supportive or allow you to feel more comfortable or even distracted from the experience, right? Giving your mind some distraction. And usually when I say this, clients will say to me, well, that's supposed to be unhelpful to try to escape or distract. Isn't that bad? And of course, overall, that's not the intention. When we're in capacity, we do want to work with this stuff. We do want to practice responding differently. But when we're overwhelmed, we're not really able to do that. And so it's actually going to help immensely to go into self-care and, yes, to distract ourselves as well, and to actually stay in what I call this deep self-care mode for as long as we need to, until we actually start to notice our system starting to shift out of overwhelm and back into more capacity. And so if you do this, this isn't going backwards. This isn't sort of hitting the pause button on your recovery. It's the opposite. Working with your overwhelm differently, treating it differently, is part of what forward movement looks like. Because if we try to do all of this kind of acceptance work while we're really overwhelmed, we just end up feeling more and more overwhelmed. And that's, of course, not helpful. So if you notice that you're going through this and you're trying to go towards the experience, you're trying to befriend or respond differently, and you notice that it just feels like you can't, or it feels impossible, or it feels like the more you do that, the harder it gets, the more you feel like you're drowning, things like that, notice that. That's likely a sign that you're really overwhelmed, and it's time to actually just go into self-care and stay there for a little while, and know that that's just part of what we all experience as we're going through this. We all go back and forth between moments of being in capacity and being overwhelmed. It's really normal. And at the beginning especially, sometimes we're spending all of our time in overwhelm, which I know feels so hard, but that's so often the case because it's such a difficult experience to be going through insomnia and anxiety, and we haven't necessarily built any capacity to actually be with what's happening, especially at the beginning. And so we might be spending a lot of time in overwhelm and not knowing really how to work with it in a helpful way. So this is one of the most important things, especially if you're at the beginning, no matter where you are, if you're just feeling really overwhelmed and confused and feeling stuck in that overwhelm, know that it might be because you're trying to do a lot of acceptance at a time where self-care might be a better, more helpful fit. I hope this was helpful. If it was, I'd love it if you would subscribe and like this video. It helps so much as I grow this community. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you next time.